The bonfire crackled, spitting embers into the night sky like secrets too heavy to keep. Ethan's heart pounded louder than the music blaring from the speakers. His eyes locked on Lucas across the crowded backyard. They were seniors now, but the weight of their hidden truth felt heavier than ever. In the small, conservative town of Willow Creek, Indiana, whispers could ruin lives. Ethan had learned that early, watching his older cousin shun for less. So he and Lucas had played their parts, best friends, nothing more. Through every hallway glance, every stolen moment in the library stacks, every late-night text that said everything but the words they longed to speak. They were actors in a play no one else could see, and the stage was a minefield. Tonight, though, something felt different. The air was thick with the scent of pine and rebellion, the kind of night where rules begged to be broken. It was the last big party before graduation, and the entire senior class of Willow Creek High was packed into Jake Miller's backyard, drunk on cheap beer and the promise of freedom. Ethan stood by the fire, his flannel shirt sticking to his skin, watching Lucas laugh with a group of football players. Lucas's blonde hair caught the firelight, and his smile, God, that smile, cut through Ethan like a blade. He wanted to cross the yard, pull Lucas close, and let the world know. But he couldn't. Not here. Not yet. Ethan's fingers tightened around his red plastic cup, the beer inside long gone flat. He remembered the first time he'd realized what Lucas meant to him. Sophomore year, a rainy afternoon in the art room. Lucas's hand brushing his as they shared a paintbrush. The touch had been electric, a spark that burned away every doubt Ethan had about who he was. Lucas had looked at him then, green eyes bright with something unspoken, and Ethan knew he wasn't alone. They'd been careful since then, painfully so, meeting in secret at the old oak tree by the creek, sharing whispers and dreams where no one could hear. But careful wasn't enough tonight. Ethan felt like a dam about to burst. "Hey, you okay, man?" Jake's voice snapped Ethan back to the present. The quarterback loomed over him, his breath sour with whiskey. "You're staring at Lucas like you're going to cry or something." Ethan forced a laugh, his heart lurching. Just zoned out. Too much beer, I guess. He hated how easily the lie came, how practiced it was. Jake shrugged and wandered off, but Ethan's chest tightened. He'd heard the rumors before, snickers in the locker room, pointed questions from guys who thought fag was a punchline. He and Lucas had laughed it off, deflected, played the game. But every denial chipped away at Ethan's soul. Across the yard, Lucas caught his eye. A quick, subtle nod toward the edge of the property, where the woods met the grass. Ethan's pulse quickened. He waited a beat, then slipped away from the crowd, his sneakers silent on the damp ground. The music faded as he reached the tree line, and there was Lucas, leaning against a pine, his face half-shadowed but unmistakable. "You're going to get us caught, staring like that," Lucas said, his voice low, teasing but laced with something heavier. He stepped closer, close enough that Ethan could smell the faint cedar of his cologne. "What's wrong?" Ethan swallowed hard. "I'm tired, Lucas. Tired of pretending. Tired of hiding. He stopped, the words too big, too dangerous. "I want you. Out in the open. No more lies." Lucas's eyes softened, but his jaw tightened. "You know what happens if we do that here? My dad, your mom, the whole damn town. They'd tear us apart." "I don't care," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "I can't keep doing this. I love you, Lucas. I've loved you since we were 15, and I'm done acting like it's something to be ashamed of." The words hung between them, raw and reckless. Lucas's breath hitched, and for a moment, Ethan thought he'd pull away, retreat to the safety of their secret. But then Lucas grabbed his hand, his grip firm, desperate. "You think I don't feel the same? Every day, Ethan, I wake up wanting to scream it. But we're so close to getting out. College, a new city, a fresh start. We just have to hold on a little longer." Ethan shook his head, tears stinging his eyes. "I don't know if I can." He stepped closer, their foreheads almost touching. "What if we don't make it that far? What if we lose this? Us, because we're too scared to fight for it?" Lucas's hand moved to Ethan's cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear. We won't lose this. I promise. His voice was fierce, a vow. And then, before Ethan could say another word, Lucas kissed him. It wasn't their first kiss. There'd been stolen moments before, quick and cautious, but this one was different. It was hungry, unguarded, a defiance of every rule they'd been forced to follow. Ethan melted into it, his hands clutching Lucas's jacket, the world fading until it was just them, just this. For a moment, they were free. A twig snapped nearby, and they broke apart, hearts racing. Ethan's eyes darted to the shadows, but no one was there. Just the wind, maybe or a deer. But the fear was real, a cold reminder of the stakes. Lucas grabbed his hand again, pulling him deeper into the woods. "Come on," he whispered. "We need to talk. Somewhere safe." They moved silently, the party's noise a distant hum. Ethan's mind raced. He knew Lucas was right. Willow Creek wasn't ready for them. But the ache in his chest screamed for more than stolen moments. He wanted a life, not a secret. And as they reached the old oak by the creek, their sanctuary, Ethan made a decision. Tonight, something had to change. Under the ancient oak, its gnarled branches stretching like a protective canopy, Ethan and Lucas sat on the mossy ground, their shoulders brushing. The creek babbled nearby, a soft counterpoint to the tension coiled in Ethan's chest. Moonlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on Lucas's face, and Ethan wondered how someone could look so beautiful and so haunted at the same time. "I meant what I said," Ethan started, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can't keep living like this. Hiding you feels like hiding myself." He picked at a blade of grass, twisting it between his fingers. "Do you know what it's like to walk past you in the halls, pretending you're just my friend? Every time I do, I lose a piece of me." Lucas's eyes were fixed on the creek, his jaw tight. "I know," he said finally. "You think it's easy for me? Watching you laugh with Sarah or joke with Jake, knowing I can't touch you, can't even look at you too long without someone noticing?" He turned to Ethan, his gaze raw. "My dad's a deacon, Ethan. He'd disown me. Or worse." Ethan's stomach twisted. He'd met Mr. Thompson, Lucas's father, a man whose stern voice could silence a room. The Thompsons were pillars of Willow Creek's church, their lives a carefully curated image of piety. Ethan's own mother wasn't much better. Her Bible study group was her lifeline after his dad left, and she made it clear what she thought of those people. But Ethan had always hoped love could outweigh fear. Now he wasn't so sure. "Then what do we do?" Ethan asked, his voice cracking. "Wait until we're 50, sneaking around like criminals? Or do we just end it?" The words burned his throat, but he had to say them. The thought of losing Lucas was unbearable, but so was the cage they were trapped in. Lucas's head snapped up, his eyes fierce. "Don't you dare say that. I'm not giving you up, Ethan. Not now, not ever." He grabbed Ethan's hand, his grip almost painful. "But we have to be smart. We're leaving for college in 3 months. Indianapolis isn't Willow Creek. We could be ourselves there, start over. We just need to survive until then." Ethan wanted to believe him, wanted to cling to the promise of a future where they could hold hands in public, kiss without looking over their shoulders. But the present was suffocating. "And what if we can't?" he pressed. "What if someone finds out before then? What if—" He stopped, hearing the tremor in his own voice. "I heard Jake talking last week. He asked why we're always together." He wasn't joking, Lucas. "People are starting to talk." Lucas's face paled, but he didn't let go of Ethan's hand. "Let them talk. They don't have proof. We've been careful. Have we?" Ethan's voice rose, sharp with frustration. "What about the time in the locker room, when you hugged me after the game? Or when we ditched prom to go to the creek? People notice, Lucas. They're not stupid." Lucas ran a hand through his hair, his composure fraying. "So what do you want, Ethan? To walk into school tomorrow and announce it? Kiss in the cafeteria? You know what happens to guys like us here. You've seen the news. Kids beaten, kicked out, worse. I won't let that happen to you." Ethan's chest ached, torn between fear and defiance. He stood, pacing a small circle under the oak. "I'm not saying we should be reckless, but I'm done lying to myself. I want to fight for us, Lucas. I want to believe we're stronger than this town. Lucas stood too, closing the distance between them. We are stronger, he said, his voice low and intense. But fighting doesn't mean throwing ourselves to the wolves. It means surviving long enough to build a life together. He cupped Ethan's face, his touch gentle but firm. I love you, Ethan. I've never loved anyone else, and I never will. But we need time. Ethan leaned into Lucas's touch, his resolve wavering. He wanted to argue, to demand more, but the warmth of Lucas's hands grounded him. Okay, he said finally, his voice barely audible. But I need something, Lucas. A sign we're not just running in place. Something real. Lucas's eyes searched his, and then he nodded. Tomorrow night, he said. There's a place I found, an old barn a few miles out. No one goes there. We'll have it to ourselves. No hiding, no pretending. Just us. His lips curved into a small, hopeful smile. Can you wait that long? Ethan's heart lifted, a spark of hope cutting through the weight. Yeah, he said, managing a smile of his own. I can wait for that. They sat again, shoulder to shoulder, the creek's murmur filling the silence. For the first time that night, Ethan felt like they could make it. But as they slipped back to the party, blending into the crowd with practiced ease, a shadow lingered in Ethan's mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that their secret was unraveling, thread by thread, and that tomorrow night might change everything, or end it. The next day dragged like a lifetime. Ethan sat through chemistry, his pencil tapping restlessly against his notebook, Lucas's promise echoing in his head. The old barn. Just us. He stole glances at Lucas across the classroom, catching the faint curve of his smile, a silent reassurance. But the weight of the day pressed harder, whispers in the halls, a pointed stare from Jake during lunch, a note slipped into Ethan's locker that read, "We're watching you." No signature, just sharp, angry letters that made his stomach churn. By dusk, Ethan was a bundle of nerves, his backpack slung over one shoulder as he biked to the edge of town. The barn stood alone in a field of wildflowers, its red paint peeling, but its structure solid, a relic of a forgotten farm. Lucas was already there, leaning against the door, his silhouette framed by the setting sun. Ethan's breath caught at the sight. Lucas, in a simple white tee and jeans, looked like he belonged in a dream, not this dusty corner of Indiana. You made it, Lucas said, his voice warm but tinged with nerves. He pushed the barn door open, revealing a space lit by a single lantern he'd hung from a beam. A blanket was spread on the hay-strewn floor, a small picnic of sandwiches and soda cans arranged neatly. Ethan's heart swelled. Lucas had planned this, made it real. It's perfect, Ethan said, dropping his backpack and stepping inside. The air smelled of hay and earth, grounding and safe. For the first time in months, he felt like he could breathe. They sat on the blanket, their knees touching, and for a while they just talked about college, about the music they loved, about the life they'd build away from Willow Creek. Lucas's hand found Ethan's, their fingers lacing together naturally. This is what I want, Lucas said, his voice soft but steady. Nights like this with you. No one else, no lies. Ethan leaned in, kissing him gently, then deeper, the world shrinking to the warmth of Lucas's lips, the steady rhythm of his breath. They lay back on the blanket, staring at the rafters, their hands still entwined. I could stay here forever, Ethan murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Lucas turned to him, his eyes bright in the lantern's glow. We'll have forever, Ethan. I swear it. But even as he spoke, his gaze flickered to the barn door, a reflex born of years of caution. They stayed until midnight, lost in each other, but the ride back to town was quiet, the weight of reality creeping back in. Ethan couldn't shake the note from his locker, the words seared into his mind. We're watching you. Someone knew or suspected, and the thought made his skin crawl. At school the next day, the air felt charged like the calm before a storm. Ethan overheard whispers in the cafeteria, caught Jake staring at him during gym. Lucas noticed too, his usual easy smile strained. Just ignore them, he muttered as they passed in the hall. But ignoring it wasn't enough. By the end of the day, Ethan found another note in his locker. Fags don't belong here. His hands shook as he crumpled it, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and fury. He showed it to Lucas after school, in the privacy of the art room. Lucas's face hardened, his fists clenching. "Who's doing this?" he demanded, his voice low but shaking. "Jake, one of his buddies." "I don't know," Ethan said, his throat tight. "But it's not just talk anymore. They're targeting us." Lucas paced, his calm unraveling. "We can't let them win. We stick to the plan, keep our heads down, get out of here. They want to scare us, Ethan. We don't give them the satisfaction." But Ethan wasn't so sure. The notes, the stares, the whispers, they were closing in. That night, lying in bed, he stared at the ceiling, his mind racing. He loved Lucas more than anything, but love wasn't shield. And as he drifted into uneasy sleep, he couldn't shake the feeling that their secret was no longer theirs alone. The final weeks of senior year became a tightrope walk. Ethan and Lucas moved through school like ghosts, avoiding each other's eyes in public, their texts reduced to logistics. Meet at the creek, 10 p.m. The notes kept coming, each one uglier than the last, slipped into lockers or tucked under windshield wipers. "You're not fooling anyone. Leave before we make you." Ethan's anger grew, but so did his fear, a cold knot in his stomach that never loosened. One night, unable to sleep, Ethan biked to Lucas's house, hiding in the shadows of the oak tree across the street. He texted Lucas, "Need to see you." Now. Minutes later, Lucas slipped out, his face pale under the streetlight. They walked to the creek, silent until they reached their spot. "They're not stopping," Ethan said, his voice raw. "I found another note today. It said they'd fix us." He pulled the crumpled paper from his pocket, handing it to Lucas. "I am scared, Lucas. Not just for me, for you." Lucas's eyes scanned the note, his jaw tightening. "This is Jake," he said, his voice low and certain. "I heard him talking to his buddies yesterday, saying he knows about us. He's been watching, waiting for us to slip up." Ethan's heart sank. Jake Miller wasn't just a bully. He was the town's golden boy, quarterback, churchgoer, untouchable. "What do we do?" Ethan asked, his voice barely steady. "We can't keep hiding. It's killing me." Lucas took a deep breath, his hands gripping Ethan's shoulders. "We fight back, but not their way. We graduate, we leave, we live. That's how we win." His voice was fierce, but his eyes betrayed his fear. "I won't let them take you from me." Ethan nodded, wanting to believe it, but the weight of the notes, the stares, the whispers was crushing. They kissed, quick and desperate, before parting ways. But as Ethan biked home, he noticed a truck following him, its headlights too close. He pedaled faster, his heart pounding, until it turned down another street. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe. The next day, Jake cornered Ethan in a locker room after gym, his smirk cold. "You and Lucas think you're so smart, don't you?" he said, his voice low, menacing. "Everyone knows. You're not welcome here." Ethan's fists clenched, but he kept his voice steady. "Leave us alone, Jake. You don't know anything." Jake laughed, stepping closer. "Oh, I know enough. And soon, everyone else will too." He walked away, leaving Ethan shaking with rage and fear. That night, Ethan and Lucas met at the barn again, their sanctuary now tinged with desperation. "We can't wait anymore," Ethan said, his voice urgent. "We need to tell someone, our parents, a teacher, someone. Or we leave now, before it gets worse." Lucas shook his head, his face pale. "If we tell, it's over. My dad will send me to one of those camps. Your mom, you know how she is. And we can't just run. We have no money, no plan." "Then what?" Ethan snapped, his frustration boiling over. "We wait for Jake to out us. For someone to hurt us." He paced the barn, his hands in his hair. "I love you, Lucas, but I can't live like this. I won't." Lucas grabbed him, pulling him into a fierce embrace. "We'll figure it out," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I promise." But as they held each other, the barn door creaked and footsteps echoed outside. They froze, hearts pounding, as a shadow passed by the window. Someone was there. Ethan's breath caught, his body rigid as the footsteps grew closer. Lucas gripped his arm, his eyes wide with panic. "Stay quiet," he whispered, pulling Ethan behind a stack of hay bales. The lantern flickered, casting long shadows as the barn door groaned open. It was Jake, his silhouette unmistakable, flanked by two of his friends. "Come out, freaks," Jake called, his voice dripping with malice. "We know you're in here." A flashlight beam swept the barn, cutting through the darkness. Ethan's heart hammered so loud he was sure they'd hear it. Lucas's hand tightened on his, a silent plea to stay calm. But Ethan's fear was giving way to something else, rage. He was done hiding, done letting Jake and this town dictate his life. He stood, stepping into the light before Lucas could stop him. "Leave us alone, Jake," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "This isn't your business." Jake's laugh was cruel, his flashlight blinding Ethan. "Oh, it's everyone's business now. You think you could just be like this? In our town." He stepped closer, his friends looming behind him. "You're disgusting." Lucas stood, placing himself between Ethan and Jake. "Back off," he said, his voice low, dangerous. "You don't get to decide who we are." Jake's smirk faltered, but he recovered quickly. "You'll regret this," he said, pulling out his phone. "Smile for the camera, lovers." The flash went off, capturing Ethan and Lucas in the dim barn, their faces exposed. Ethan lunged, knocking the phone from Jake's hand. It hit the ground, screen cracking. Jake's friends grabbed Ethan, pinning his arms, but Lucas was on them in an instant, shoving one to the ground. "Run!" Lucas shouted, grabbing Ethan's hand. They bolted from the barn, Jake's curses echoing behind them. The field was dark, the wildflowers trampled under their feet as they ran, hearts pounding, toward the road. They didn't stop until they reached Ethan's bike, hidden in the brush. Gasping for breath, they clung to each other, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. "They have a picture," Ethan said, his voice shaking. "They'll show everyone." Lucas's face was grim, but his eyes burned with determination. "Then we don't hide anymore," he said. "We tell the truth, our way, before they can twist it." The next morning, Ethan and Lucas stood in the school parking lot, hands clasped, faces pale but resolute. Word had spread. Jake's photo was already circulating, whispers turning to shouts. Ethan's mother had called him, her voice thick with tears and anger, demanding he come home. Lucas's father had locked him out. But as they faced a crowd of students, some jeering, some silent, Ethan felt a strange calm. "We're done hiding," Lucas said, his voice carrying over the murmurs. "We love each other. If you can't handle that, that's your problem, not ours." He squeezed Ethan's hand, and Ethan felt the weight of years lift, replaced by a fragile but fierce hope. The days that followed were brutal. Ethan's mother refused to speak to him, and Lucas's family cut him off. But there were allies too, a teacher who offered them a place to stay, classmates who stood by them, even a few parents who spoke out against the hate. Graduation came, and they walked across the stage together, heads high, despite the glares. They left Willow Creek that summer, moving to Indianapolis with nothing but a duffel bag and each other. College was a new world, one where they could hold hands in coffee shops, kiss under streetlights, build a life without fear. It wasn't perfect, scars lingered, and some days the past felt too close. But every night, as they lay together, Ethan knew they'd won. They'd fought for their love and found a home in each other, a truth stronger than any town's judgment. Years later, standing in that same meadow where they'd once hidden, Ethan and Lucas carved their initials into the old oak, a quiet vow. The world had changed, and so had they, but their love remained, unbroken, unashamed, and eternal.